Mute. We're looking at the Mansells right now.
All right. I have just unmuted my microphone. You guys should have the ability to unmute your microphones when the time comes as well. Give me a big wave if you're hearing me and paying attention. Ready to start Bible class for tonight. I'm very excited. It's about a minute after 7 o'clock. Again, depending on what format you're using, our Zoom folks are live tonight. And have some questions, going to ask some input from you guys. Then we're also on Boxcast, and that should be sending a feed over to Facebook Live as well. I know that you guys are going to be a little bit behind if you're on Facebook or Boxcast, but I'm glad that you're here as well, and then maybe catching this on a recording later on. I've been watching an awful lot of church services and Bible classes and interactive things that folks have been doing. I got on my Facebook feed just a little while ago, and there were probably 6 of my friends, on there with their faces plastered to the camera and stuff like that. So it's been kind of funny to watch. I wanted to get some feedback from you guys. Of course, you have the ability to mute and unmute yourselves, and I see that a couple of microphones have done that. I want to know what the strangest thing you've seen or done this week is. What's the strangest thing you've seen or done? And then I also want to know what's the most normal thing that you have seen or done this week. Whatever normal is for you and your household, we might have some very different answers there. But I'm looking for hands, and I want to know the strangest thing you've seen and the most normal thing. All right, I got some hands over here. Deirdre, what have you got? Yeah, go ahead.
I went through the Wendy's drive-through, and the person taking the money pushed this bucket out the window, and I was looking at her like, what do I do with the bucket? And I start to hand her the debit card, and she's like, you got to put it in the bucket.
Really? They won't even touch it with their
well, she had to touch it once she got it in the window.
Is it? And I'm assuming that's the strange thing, right? That's not the normal thing.
Yes.
Yeah. What have you got, Christina?
The strangest thing is that Jolie's leg is hurting. It started hurting by itself, and
that's not good.
She kept on chewing on it, and I noticed, and I picked up her leg, and she was like that, and I was just like, okay.
Now, as long as we're talking about a pet, that's one thing. But if somebody,
it's a pet. It's a pet.
Okay, somebody in the house starts doing a different story. I want to know, what have you guys? Let's talk a little bit. I miss you. I want to hear from you. What's the strangest thing you've seen? Not you, Baron. No, I miss you too, Baron. Go ahead. Wait, Gwen, Jerry, y'all had a mic unmuted. Then we'll go to Baron.
I don't have anything strange. I've got something that's normal.
Good. I'll take normal.
I stayed in the woods turkey hunting.
Yeah. Why?
That's about as far away from people as I can get.
That's right. That's social isolation for sure, isn't it? Any luck?
Not yet.
All right.
Got close.
Yeah. Good deal. All right, Baron, what you got?
Every night when I go to my house, the streets are just about empty. That's the strange. It really is strange that right around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I pass maybe 7, 8, 10 people on my way back to Lexington, where I live. People are actually listening. It's strange, but it's strange that people are listening.
It's eerie. I finally have a really good grasp of what that word eerie means, at least in my personal, take on it, because it is strange, especially, I don't know if you guys saw this morning, Jerry, maybe out in the woods, it was kind of foggy, misty this morning. And man, when I walked outside and it was just kind of gray and hanging like that, I mean, otherwise it was a nice day outside, but it was just quiet, just so quiet. So something I thought about. Let's see, anybody else got anything strange or normal going on in their world? Shawanda, I saw your microphone. What you got? Oh, wait, Baron. Go ahead, Baron.
I was just going to say normal. I got yelled at today. So if that makes you
Absolutely. We need normalcy. We need that normalcy. Shawanda, did you have something you wanted to say, or is your microphone muted? Whoa, camera's going all over the place. All right. Well, that was just kind of to get us started a little bit. I'm trying to, it is quite the effort on my part to figure out how to make all this stuff fit. I've got 6 different things that we're going through, and screens to share and Bible verses and stuff. Of course, we're in Hebrews from continuing from last week. So invite you to go ahead and start there. But we're going to move into the second part of our class on unshakable. Of course, the end of Hebrews chapter 12. Down there, what is it, verse 28? Let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And that's a big deal. I think that's a really powerful image of a mountain that quakes and shakes and is covered in darkness. And there's terror at the sight of that. And then the writer of Hebrews comes in after that. And he says, that's not where we are. We're at a party. We are at a celebration. We are at this unbelievable event, this city of the living God, and our kingdom cannot be shaken. And that really resonated with me, talking about our current situation, because things are shaking. Things are going all over the place. So for us to have the ability to be a part of something that's not going anywhere, that we don't have to worry about if we stick with it, that's kind of a big deal for me. So we're looking at 3 or 4 different things that we can do from Hebrews chapter 12 that remind us that we are a part of this unshakable kingdom and help us participate in that unshakable kingdom. It's kind of like having access to something amazing and not taking advantage of it. You know, being a part of this unshakable kingdom is only beneficial if we take part in that aspect, you know, if we participate in it. So it's not just enough to have citizenship in that kingdom. We have to live that way. We have to have it influence us. So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking at in this class study. So last week we looked at Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1, and we saw that we're running a race. And if we're going to run the race, we've got to do 2 things. They're really 2 sides of the same coin, the same concept, but we have to lay aside the baggage that weighs us down and prevents us from getting our goals accomplished. And we have to disentangle ourselves from sin that so easily besets us, or I actually like the translation better that says so easily ensnares us. It wraps you up, it ties you up. So that's what we're talking about from last week. And then we're going to take that and move next into the second thing that we can do, and that is to focus. If we want to be unshakable, we've got to be focused. The question is, what are we going to be focused on? I wanted to do a quick, if you saw Facebook, you saw this image. I'm having trouble finding it. There we go. All right. So let's share this one. I put this picture up on Facebook. Can you see that? Give me a thumbs up if you see a crowd of people. Yeah, good deal. All right. So here's this question. What do you see? Somebody unmute your microphone. Tell me what you see in this image. What catches your mind, or who specifically? Anybody can do that. Go ahead.
Girl in the pink.
What about the girl in the pink, Baron? That's one of the things I was waiting on.
She's the only one not shielding herself, really. Looks like she's kind of got her arms open, but everybody else is like, ah.
Yeah, she seems to be a little
Led by the
little clueless, maybe. She's not the only one, I think. I see another, I see a couple of other folks that might fit in that same category.
Guy's fixing to get hit by the bats, not even moving.
I don't know if the guy at the bat sees what's happening. I don't know if it's even registered for him. This is probably the perfect timing of a picture because, man, I don't think he even realizes what's happening to him right now, and that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough. I don't know. I see a couple other guys. Maybe there's a guy in a black shirt just behind the guy that's getting hit with the baseball bat. He's either supremely confident that there's no way that's coming up there to him, or he's a little bit slow on realizing how close that bat is to being in his territory. Everybody else is pretty focused, right? We talk about focus, and that's what this picture is a reminder of, is what happens when you take your eyes off of the thing you're supposed to be watching. And of course, I think you go to a baseball game, you're supposed to pay attention. I got a good friend, Brian Dill. He's baseball aficionado. He gets into all of the details about baseball. So when he goes to a baseball game, he is laser focused. He is paying attention. He knows who's at bat and all the numbers that matter and all that kind of stuff. And he's paying attention. I'm more likely at a baseball game to be walking around, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to go to the concession stand. I'm going to find somebody to talk with. I may have a glove, but there's as much chance that it will be on top of my head as it will be on my hand, to be perfectly honest with you. Different people, hey, you enjoy your baseball game the way that you want to. I'll enjoy it the way I want to. But I think that focusing is pretty important to keep us on the right track and to keep us from getting hurt. I thought that was a pretty good way to break the ice on that. I'm going to stop sharing that picture now. So let's talk about focus, right? What distracts us? So let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's talk about a project. I'm going to open the microphone up here in just a second. So be thinking about how you would answer this question. Is there anybody, show of hands or thumbs up, anybody in this chat right now struggle with procrastination? I'm going to raise both of my hands. Procrastination is probably my worst enemy most of the time. And we have these tricks, right? I'm going to want to hear your tricks for overcoming procrastination, or what you do to get back on focus. But have you ever had a project or a paper or an assignment or something that you've needed to get done, and you get everything together and you sit down at the table, or you get all the tools out and you sit down and you're there in the moment, and the only thing you can think of is everything else that's going on all around you? I don't know if I'm the only one that it happens to, but this distraction from trying to get this job done, if that hits you like it hits me, it feels like I can't get my brain to concentrate on what I'm supposed to be focused on, and I'm really distracted. What are some things for you guys? First, tell me what distracts you when you're supposed to be concentrating on that one thing, getting that project done, meeting the deadline, whatever that is. What are the things that intrude in your mind? Go ahead, Mansell clan. Your hands were the first to go up. So.
I want to say it.
All right, Christina, you go first.
What distracts me is talking to my boyfriend, and it drives me away from him.
Yeah, that's a real problem. I'm with you. I don't personally have that problem, but I understand where you're coming from.
Autumn probably has it.
You don't talk
Right.
to your boyfriend all the time?
I'm really glad you clarified.
Yes,
Not
I
all of
do
them,
talk to
no.
him. Hi, Miss Sissy.
All right, good. All right, y'all give me somebody else. Somebody else
Chelsea
unmute
still
your
had
microphone
one.
or raise your hand. Give us a thought.
Chelsea still.
All right,
had
go
one.
ahead, Chelsea. Go ahead.
I think the biggest distractions for me is probably my phone and Minecraft and games and stuff.
Yeah, the phones have become a problem, haven't they? It is so
Yes.
easy. Man, it's so easy to get stuck on. I just assumed you were going to say talking to Christina's boyfriend. That's why I didn't call.
No, she would not be talking to my boyfriend. No,
I apologize for that.
no.
All right. Who else? Come on, somebody else tell me something that distracts you. What is it that creeps into your mind? Go ahead, Baron.
I get distracted when I know I don't want to do it. So I've had a few assignments where I just knew I don't want to do this. This is so dumb. This is not worth my time doing. And that will stop me and normally cause me to go look for something else to do.
Right. And in that case, it doesn't have to be anything, any big thing that distracts us. it's a mental block. My mental block is the other way around. It's not, sometimes the assignment, I just don't like it. But most of the time it's, I'm going to do a bad job. I'm not prepared for this. I'm not adequate for this. I'm not good enough. And whatever I come up with is going to be bad. So it's really hard for me to put, get my feet moving, get my hands working to do that job, because I doubt myself. And so I doubt what the final product is going to be. But man, all kinds of stuff can distract us. Anybody else have anything that does distract you? Go ahead, Kate and Creasy.
I mean, it's a good distraction, but I have Weston.
Yeah, kids can do that. Yeah, a little bit. That's a real dilemma a lot of times, because you can't just put them in the corner all the time permanently. We might try, but we're not supposed to do that. My children are giving me a funny look here as if that's what I do, but I don't know that I get to do that. So what can you do? Anybody got any tips? How do you get past that hurdle? How do you get across that? How do we break the habits of procrastination? What are some things that help you get back on track? Anybody know anything? All right, Mansels, go ahead.
For me, when I'm trying to get back on focus, I remind myself of the consequences that are going to happen if I don't get something done.
True.
Same here.
That's considering the alternative. You can also connect with the why you need to do something, which is the positive ways. And then remember that motivation follows action.
Motivation follows action. I like that. Our actions are going to be based, and that's it. My lack of motivation sometimes is because I fear a negative outcome. So because I'm fearing a negative outcome, it's really hard to push through and to keep going. So if you can give yourself that positive reinforcement, that can be one thing to help you get back on track. Anybody else have anything?
I'll use a reward system. So
all right,
if
tell
I
me
get
about
that
it.
project done, then I can have this reward.
Is it food? It's food for me.
Try not to be food. It might be.
You're so much smarter than me, Gwen. So much better. But yeah, absolutely. I get a reward, get up and take a break. Sometimes it's breaking it, for me, it's breaking it down into smaller pieces. Instead of saying, I got to write this whole 20-page paper, I say, all right, if I can get the bibliography finished, then I can take a break and then I can come back. And then another little piece, will be, to get this done, and get it in chunks. And then I'll take that reward and maybe not food, probably food, but yeah. All right, Deirdre, go ahead and unmute, share what you got.
The other thing I tell my clients, and this is strange for a counselor to say, but ignore your feelings. In the cases where you need to get something done, you ignore that feeling that you don't want to do it.
Feelings are not facts. That's right. It's a big deal. All right, Jeff, go ahead, unmute. Tell me what you got.
All right. You hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There's some of us that have a mental illness that get a rush out of waiting till the last minute and then digging into it hard and going.
Right.
The
going pressure. We like that pressure.
I can do it. I can wait. And then the reward is, oh, I've only got X amount of time to get this done. Now I can focus. And it's like I say, it's kind of I've heard other people talk about it and they say it's a rush. It is. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's wow, and then you whip it out in like 2 hours if it's
right
or whatever. And then you're like, yeah,
look what I did. I did this so fast. Yeah, that's a problem. Sometimes I get that rush. I'm like, I can think of a couple of assignments where I have absolutely waited intentionally too long, not consciously intentionally, but in my brain, I'm like, the only reason you're doing this is because you want to see if you can get away with it. And that's dangerous. Yeah, that's a dangerous one too. We've got stuff we're supposed to focus on. The point is Satan doesn't have to trip us up in some huge thing, even though he will if he can. He'll get that sin that ensnares us. He'll trip us up if he can, but he doesn't have to do that. he can just get us to lose focus. He can just get us to lose sight of what we're supposed to be doing. And so I find it interesting that as soon as it talks about in Hebrews 12:1, run with endurance the race that is set before us, the very next phrase is looking unto Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. If you're going to run a race, what are you supposed to focus on running a race? You guys tell me. Maybe if you ran track or something like that, you'll have a better grasp on it. But anybody that's tried to run a race, what are you supposed to focus on?
When Sarah ran cross country, they told them to focus on the runner in front of you.
Sometimes you need to focus on the runner that's right in front of you. Focus on taking over that particular person. Of course, that's cross country. I think it's different in different kinds of races. If I'm thinking about a 100-yard dash, except for the one picture that I saw of Usain Bolt, right? And there was that one time as he's crossing the finish line, and it makes that perfect shot because he's looking back, with his hands out like this, and he's looking at the guy beside him or behind him, pretty far behind him. What are those guys always looking at? Macy said it. What was it? They're looking at the finish line. They're looking at the goal. They're looking at, and they're focused on, got to get my head across that line. That's what we're focused on. And I find it interesting in Hebrews 12 and verse 2, we're told to focus on Jesus. The goal is Christ. And somebody brought up an interesting question. In our life, well, what do we typically think of as the finish line? What's the finish line of your life? That's exactly right. Gwen said that. Heaven, right? If I'm thinking about focusing on the finish line, I'm thinking about focusing on heaven. But this verse doesn't tell us to focus on heaven. So do you have any thoughts about that? Why does it say focus on Jesus as the goal or the what we're trying to accomplish rather than focusing on heaven as the finish line that we're supposed to be thinking about? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Jeff. Yeah, unmute.
Well, this just goes back to what I was saying earlier. You get that rush about doing everything at the last minute. Can you do that with life? You can't. Death is death. Christ is alive. So rather than focus on, everything that I have to get done before I die, which
Right.
is, something we need to do, but we should be focused on everything that I need to get done for Christ. Then if I die like 5 seconds from now, then it's okay.
Right.
But
I like that.
That's my weakness,
But a lot of people live that way. I think you're right. I think, there's an awful lot of people that are out there going, I'll wait and do this when I'm older, or when I've had my fun, or, I'll get around to being a religious person later on in life. That's for when I'm at the end of life. But this is a focus on living. This is a focus on not how we die, but how we live. I like that. Deirdre, go ahead.
Well, the ESV version says that Jesus is the founder and perfecter of our faith. If we take our eyes off of him, we might miss the mark. So we focus on him instead of anything else.
Right. And I like that. And that was the next place that I was going to go, is it describes Jesus in a way that tells us why we're supposed to focus on him. Focus on Jesus. Look at Jesus, because he is the author and the finisher, the founder and the completer, the perfecter of our faith. What do you think that means? And why do you think it matters that Jesus is the author and finisher? I like what Deirdre said about, missing the mark. It gives us a mark to aim for. Do you have any other thoughts about that phrase, the author and the finisher of our faith, and what that has to do with, why do we focus on him because he's the author and finisher? What does that mean? Founder and perfecter. Yeah, go ahead, Deirdre.
So it means that he's the example that we're to follow.
Okay, I like that. I think that that gives us a good thing to shoot for. He provides the example for us. Does anybody think of any other ways that that phrase might matter, or what that phrase might include or indicate? Jeff?
Author and finisher, Alpha, Omega, beginning, the end.
He's the whole package, right? He's the whole deal. Yeah, I think that there's something true to be said about that. But I don't know what that means to different people. I kind of have an idea of what that means to me, but what does it mean for you to know that Jesus is the author and the perfecter? I'm looking, it says author and perfecter of our faith. So I think that that is, a plural, but it's our, not just the faith in general, but he's the author and the perfecter of your faith. How is he the author and the perfecter of your faith? Does that mean anything? Does that change anything? And it may not. I'm just looking for things that make us think. The idea of having Jesus as the author and the finisher, the Alpha and the Omega, being all encompassing, everything about my faith only came through Jesus. Go ahead, Caitlin Creasy.
I was just going to say, he's the only one that can perfect our faith. And he's the reason we finish the race and get to heaven. It's nothing to do with what I do. It's all him.
Right. And doesn't Paul talk about that he will supply what's lacking in our faith? I think that's Philippians chapter 3. I may be wrong about that, but yeah, there's that idea that I cannot be perfected. I can't fill up what's lacking, what's missing. I have to have Christ to do that. And that always makes me think of and go back to, okay, if he's the only thing that can complete, can conclude, can finish my faith, well, if Hebrews says he's the author and the perfecter, there's something there at the beginning too that I think we have to acknowledge, that without Christ, our faith wouldn't have a birth, wouldn't have a genesis, it wouldn't have a beginning. We don't have a starting point to faith, just like we don't have a completion of that faith without Christ. I don't know if that, makes an impact or hits you anyway. Logan, what do you got?
I think that's important because there's a lot of religions that are founded by man. I think it's just explicitly said.
We can't hear him, Adam.
Oh no! Speak up.
I think that's the word founder is important because there's a lot of religions.
Still can't hear him.
There's something wrong with his mic.
But I just took it. It's the same mic. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Hello. So the word founder, I think, is important because a lot of people that play religion.
It's you, man.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Just keep talking.
He needs a ventriloquist.
Okay. I don't understand why I get picked up, but Logan's not.
Point, though.
Did you get the point? Yeah, Doug, how would you re-emphasize that point? Put that into strange. But his point, what he said was to know that this is not a man-made religion. There are plenty of man-made religions. There are plenty of cults. There are plenty of groups that can trace themselves to, a human origin, and that's problematic. Those are difficult. Being able to trace it back to Christ makes a huge difference. I think that's true. So we're looking at Jesus. We're taking this passage here, Hebrews chapter 12, verse number 2, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, I want to focus on a phrase or two here. I want to ask your thoughts, and then I want to use an example to finish out class tonight on focus. So the phrase that I want to look at, it tells us to look to Jesus because he's the author and the perfecter of our faith. And then it tells us something about Jesus, who, and then the English Standard Version says, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. Now, I want to talk about that phrase. I want to think about it a couple ways. I think I mentioned this maybe once or twice before at Petersville, depending on what versions of the Bible that you are using. What do you think the joy set before Jesus was? Anybody got any ideas where it says, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross? What is that joy? What is the writer of Hebrews talking about? Richard, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead, unmute your microphone. Tell us what you think.
Pleasing the Father.
Okay, so for the concept of being able to please the Father, was able and willing and able to endure the cross. I like that. I think that's a possibility. What other possibilities? Baron, go ahead, unmute and give us your thoughts.
I think it was the idea of glorification, that he is going to sit on the right hand of the Father, that there is a goal ahead of him, that he is reaching, and that is to sit at his right hand, because Psalm 110 is quoted a lot in throughout Hebrews. So he's looking to say, the Lord said to my Lord, sit on my right hand. And that's the goal that he's leading himself to.
Okay, good. I like that. Amanda, I saw your hand up. If you want to unmute your mic, tell us, what are you thinking about there?
What I think that it means is the fact that for him to endure all of that pain and to go through that, his mindset was knowing that he is saving each and one of us. In the long run, he is washing away all of our sins. It wasn't for him.
Right. I think that's true. I think that's good too. All right, good. Yeah, thanks for that. Jim, go ahead. I see your hands up. Unmute your microphone first, and then it's still there. It goes. All right, Jim, go ahead. What you got?
I think it was he was basically showing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work.
The completion of the work. Yeah, I like that. That's a good thought, that he brought it, the idea about the faith that he brought to completion. He brings his work to completion, that whole tetelestai, it is finished or it is accomplished, the idea of being able to do that. I think a theme that's carried through, all of these ideas is the idea that he was looking past the cross. He was looking beyond the pain and suffering, or as Hebrews 12 will talk about, the shame. He despised that shame, and instead he was focused on glorifying the Father, himself being glorified, himself being seated at the right hand of the throne of God, or being able to cleanse us from our sins. I've heard some people talk about, the joy of being able to be reunited with us in heaven one day. Let's see, Amanda, she's over on Facebook, so I'm just reading the comment. Joy on the cross was that he was almost home. That's a neat thought. He would soon be back. I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but even Jesus' best day on earth of those 33 years had to be pretty pitiful in comparison with sitting in heaven. Not just the worst moments of the cross, but even the best days on earth, he still had to be thinking about and longing for home. I mean, I think that's just my opinion there. And so Amanda brings up a point. Maybe the joy is, this is my opportunity to complete my work so that I can go back home and be able to finish what I came here to start and came here to do. That's pretty impressive and pretty important as well. No matter what, Jesus is pushing through the shame, despising the negativity, the problems, the suffering, and he's focused on something else. So there's an idea of focus. Jesus is focused on something. I want to give you an alternative. I may be wrong. But there's an interesting Greek word that's used in Hebrews 12 and verse 2 that leads me to translate this verse differently. When I read in my own translation, I don't read who for the joy set before him endured the cross. And you might have, I think, some English Standard Versions have a footnote. This one that I'm currently reading from does not. If I told you to define, I'm going to pick on somebody who hasn't talked yet. I want the Gooch family to unmute their microphones. Yeah, this is just like school. I'm calling on you. Gooch, all right, and it's all right. Any of you can answer this. If I told you to define the word anti, A-N-T-I, what would you say the word anti means or is about?
Against something?
Against something? Yeah, I like that. You know, you guys, hey, congratulations, get the gold star. See, that wasn't too bad. Yeah, that's it. You passed. That's the quiz. But, you know, the word anti, if somebody is anti-government, right, that means they don't like the government. They are against the government. If someone is anti-guns, if someone is anti rainbow, My Little Pony, I don't know, you know, whatever it is, if you put the word anti at the beginning of something, it means I'm against it. It's the opposite from. I want to go the other way from. In Hebrews 12 in verse number 2, where most of our English translations say for, the Greek word is literally anti, not anti, like anti-M, but A-N-T-I, as in against. I'm going to bring up, let's see, I think I've got, I'm trying to bring up a couple of other passages. I had these written down. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 16, for instance. Just down in the same chapter, you can go down to Hebrews 12 and verse 16, and it says, see that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. The word anti appears, I'm going to try to bring up, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not, but I'm going to try to share my Bible screen with you guys and just kind of look this up. So this is my Olive Tree Bible Study software, and I can bring up this fancy, where is it at? English Greek lexicon. Dun, dun, dun. Except my computer's going to be really slow. I'm going to try to make these words a lot bigger, if it'll let me. And so what you'll be able to see on the screen are some Greek letters, and then underneath it, you've got the English equivalent. And down at the bottom, it'll say, here's verse number 2, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him. Now here is, right here, if you can see my mouse circling this word, you can make the word A, the letter A, and the others are Greek letters, so don't feel bad, but it's A-N-T-I, anti. And they have it translated for. There's a couple of places where that may work. Let me take you down here to verse 16. And I think that this one's interesting because it's in the same chapter. See to it that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright anti for a meal. He exchanged it. He traded his birthright for a meal. So the word anti here doesn't mean, it means in place of. It means to take over for. The other passage that I have written down, you can go read this one in Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28. Matthew 20, why not? Let's go look. Matthew 20, verse 28. Let's see if that brings it up. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. A ransom for many. That's the Greek word anti, opposite, exchanged. He exchanged, or the opposite of, one thing for another. When I read who for the joy set before him, I think of what we talked about tonight. I think of the idea that there was some joyful thing that he was focusing on, and that pulled him through the misery of the cross. But instead of the word for, use the word instead of. Instead of the joy that was set before him, he traded that for the cross. He exchanged something for something else. Now, I don't know if that changes the meaning of the verse for you. I don't know if you accept that idea. I don't know if you got any thoughts about that. Honestly, I don't see Autumn. Autumn may have turned, she actually knows, and I'm saying this on something that is being recorded, she knows more Greek than I do. And it will not be long before Logan knows more Greek than I do as well, because they've taken to the language much better than I ever did in school. But, there might be some other folks here that have some thoughts. Even if you don't know Greek, though, the word is anti. Now, there's a word for, it's called gar in Greek. If you wanted to do something for some reason, like for instance, when Jesus says, "This is my blood, which is given for you." That's the Greek word gar. If you read that, and Logan's checking me. He's got his Greek New Testament out beside me, so he'll let you know if I'm wrong. But there's a couple of other places where that word is a different Greek word. If you wanted to say, this is something done for a specific reason, that word is gar. So I don't know why the English translations look at it differently. And I don't know Greek as well as a lot of them, so it's likely I'm incorrect there. But when it says to focus on Jesus, and then it tells us that he was focused on something else, I think that's impressive. I think that's important. I think that that's significant. If you've got any thoughts on that and you want to raise your hand, I'll be more than happy to talk about, consider some other ideas before I move on. But I just wanted to put that out there. When I read Hebrews 12 and verse 2, I think of it like Jesus could have, for instance, in Matthew chapter 4, when Satan takes him to the top of the mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the earth and says, "Look, you don't have to go through with this plan. You don't have to go through this misery. You don't have to go through this execution and this murder. If you just bow down to me, I'll give it all to you. I'll give it all to you." And wouldn't that be a more joyful life? Wouldn't that be an easier life than what you're planning to do in the days and weeks to come? But instead of that, or maybe it's just a normal life. Maybe it's just a normal life. Do you ever think Jesus wanted to be left alone? You ever think Jesus thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just go back to Capernaum and get a little fishing boat and get married to some little, cute little Capernaumese girl, I'm making that word up, and just live a normal life? He traded that. He gave all that up for us. I don't know. It's just another way to look at it. But we're focused on him. Here's the example that I want to leave you with. It's in Matthew chapter 14. So we're going to go back to Matthew chapter 14 for the rest of the lesson tonight. I've been thinking about this, honestly, since our family retreat that we took down to Gulf Shores. Barron did a really good job talking about this passage, this section, this material here on the fact that Peter walking on the water. I think focusing on Jesus is kind of the lesson to be learned here. I want to broaden it out. We are familiar with Peter walking on the water. We're familiar with that. I think if I were to use that as an illustration for the need to focus on Jesus, I don't think I need to explain that very much. I think most of us here understand Peter was doing fine as long as he was what? Focusing on Jesus. As long as he was looking at his Lord, he was fine. But when he got distracted, that's when the problems came in. I see something interesting in this in this chapter. Matthew chapter 14, verse number 1, starts off with the lesson. Hey, Matt, Patterson, are you at work right now? Give me a thumbs up, Bradley. Are you at work right now? Can you hear me? I think it's cool. I'm just saying this for public record. Like anybody that's at work and figures out a way to sneak onto their phone or their computer and get here, I think that's awesome. You are essential workers, and we're glad that you're out there on the front lines, but I'm also really glad that you're sneaking away and joining us too. Matthew chapter 14 starts with the death of John the Baptist. Now, not only is John important prophesied person, he makes straight the path of the Lord. He prepares the way. He is the new Elijah, all these great things. What reason does Jesus have to care about John the Baptist? Somebody unmute your microphone and tell us, what's the big deal? Why does Jesus have a reason to care about John the Baptist? Maybe nobody knows. I don't believe that. I think we know. Richard, go ahead.
Because he was a relative and the forerunner.
Right. Yeah. And I think Kevin and Shawanda were going to say that maybe, and whoever else, But the idea was, here in Alabama, we would just say they're cousins. You don't have to know how you're related to somebody. If the family trees intersect somehow, then we're cousins, right? So they're cousins. And so John the Baptist dies. Now, we're not exactly sure when he dies, according to the layout of Matthew 14, because it's kind of written as an aside. It's kind of like a parenthesis. But it says in Matthew 14 and verse 13, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew, right? So if you look in Matthew 13, Jesus has been teaching. It even says, Matthew 13, verse 1, is Jesus goes down to the sea and teaches the people there in parables. This is some great parables, the parable of the weeds, the parable of the sower, all that kind of stuff. Okay, good parables here. Jesus is teaching the people. He gets word, your cousin, your forerunner, has been murdered. And not just murdered, he's been executed. I think about the stories that we hear currently modern day about, Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the beheadings, when they take a knife and they execute people in that fashion. That's what happens to John the Baptist, and it turns my stomach. I can't imagine what Jesus thinks, what Jesus feels personally about this. The Bible tells us in verse 13 that he withdraws. He gets in a boat and he sails away to a desolate place by himself. And then what does the very next verse tell us? Can't catch a break, right? They won't leave him alone. I don't think he announced, guys, I need some time to myself. I don't think he told everybody what the deal was, but he tried to get away from the crowd, and the crowd wouldn't let him. They chased after him. They followed after him. Jesus wanted some alone time. But what did Jesus do? I find Matthew chapter 14 to be a fascinating chapter for several reasons. Peter is going to learn a lesson about focus from walking on the water, but he's going to learn that lesson from his master who knows what it means to be focused. Think about all of the things that are thrown at Jesus in Matthew chapter 14. The death of his cousin, the crowds that follow after him, the desire to be left alone, the desire to grieve, the desire to do these other things, and yet the distractions, right? Matthew 14 to me is a chapter of distractions. The distractions from Jesus' mission, the distractions from Jesus' job. But then I wonder, am I looking at it the right way? The crowds follow Jesus, and they hang out with him for so long. They hang out with him for so long that according to that next section, verses 13 and following, the disciples want them to be sent home so that they can do what? How would you pantomime that? If you were playing charades right now, what did the disciples think? There you go. Caitlin Creasy's got it. All right. It's time to eat, right? Get them out of here. Get them out of here. They need to go get some food. They're hungry. That would have been the perfect time for Jesus to say, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm tired of these people. Get them out of here. Did you think about that? That would have been the perfect time for Jesus to say, I need some alone time. So yeah, let's get rid of these folks. Let's get rid of this crowd. Instead, what does Jesus do? Feeds. He feeds them all. You know, with miracle of the 2 fish, the 12 baskets of leftovers. That was not a 30-minute meal, by the way. You know, I don't know how long this miracle took to perform, but here Jesus is wanting that alone time, wanting that undistracted focus, and he's not getting it. He's not getting it. Finally, all that ends. And it says in Matthew 14:22, that's when he gets up and makes the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while what? While he dismisses the crowds. Jesus is looking for alone time. But instead of leaving it up to the disciples, who, by the way, botched it earlier, he says, you guys go ahead and cross over. I'll meet you there. I'm going to tell everybody bye. And he dismisses. He sends them on their way. That's when, verse 23, after he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And he was there alone through the night. Here's focus. Now, I think I have to check myself. I think the crowds, my initial thought is the crowds are distracting Jesus from his mission. And I'm wrong, because the crowds were his mission, right? I may be getting backwards. I may be struggling with that. Sometimes I don't want to deal with people, but people are the mission, right? But Jesus needs to pray. And so he refocuses himself. I believe that time on the mountain is refocusing. And then he walks on the water and calls Peter to come out to him. By the way, I think an interesting point, swimming was not something that people knew how to do at this time. So when Peter is in water over his head, he does not know how to swim back to the boat. In all likelihood, you know, they weren't looking to swim laps, you know. So when he starts to go down, he doesn't have any way of saving himself. Swimming competitions and, you know, references to swimming as a sport or an activity, that's not in this time period. So for Peter to be over his head in water is pretty scary. And he put himself out there knowing that when he was walking to Jesus, but he had to keep his focus. Anybody got any ideas, any thoughts? Does that make you think of something? You want to share an idea or a thought? I don't want to just be the one talking all the time. Jim, go ahead. I see your hand up. Unmute your microphone. Share something with us.
Do you think when Jesus went up to, when he finally was, I know that when we lose somebody, we're always looking for that closure. We're looking for that time to where we can sit there, we can say, okay, now I'm at peace, and I'm at peace with okay, John is gone. Now I'm at peace. And the only way that he was able to get that peace was being able to, finally, after being through everything, bombarded and everything, he finally got to be by himself to where he could finally get that closure that he needed to where he could sit there and continue on with his journey.
I don't want to grieve in front of a whole bunch of people. You know, that's not my style, I guess, if you get to say that. You know, when I'm grieving, and in those times when that's happened, I hold it in until I'm by myself, and that's when I let it all out, you know. And I may, you know, that's different for different people, but for me, that's what I'm thinking is Jesus, part of that alone time was not just to be in prayer, but to grieve for a loved one that died. You know, I think that's a great point. So I see there a lesson. Jesus, we can look at, and you can go back and you can dig some more ideas out of that. How did Jesus focus in Matthew chapter 14? And then how did Jesus transfer that lesson to Peter in a very direct and specific way when Peter walks on the water and Matthew is making it obvious that it was the distraction and the lack of focus that caused Peter to suffer the way that he did. And then we bring it back full circle. What's that mean for us? What distracts us? What is it in our life that takes our focus? I want to hear from you. This is open-ended. What distracts us? Can be you personally, or it can be, just in general. But yeah, Joe, what are you thinking about? Unmute your mic.
I just thought it was neat when you look at all three of the parts that we talked about tonight, with part of the present and then the past two stories. It was one of those life-altering, life-changing events that really turned their focus and really made them think about what's important in life at that point in time.
Yeah, does that have some connection to our current situation, you think? Yeah, we're definitely in the middle of life-altering events. I think that's a great point. And that is, my third question in this discussion. How can we use this time? How do we learn lessons? I don't think we grow accidentally, folks. I've said this a lot of times. I don't think you accidentally mature. I think we have to have a mindset and a mentality to grow through whatever circumstances, good or bad, are happening. So we have to take the reins and do something about that. So, be thinking about that. How can we use this time to sharpen our focus, to refocus it? But still give me some things that distract us. Deirdre, what have you got? Give us some things that distract us.
One of the biggest things that distracts me is life and busyness. Between work and family, I am so busy. I don't hardly have any time to sit down and be still and know that God is there. And even I know Richard posted last week about, like he does every week, what have you been reading? And I said, I don't have time to read because I'm still just as busy as I was with my work and with taking care of family as before this all started.
Right. Busyness. I think that's a big word. I think in our day and age, that's a big problem that we've got to figure out. What is it that distracts us from focusing on what makes us take our eyes off of Jesus?
Amanda's got something.
All right, go ahead, Amanda. I'm sorry. I didn't.
I know you're good. I don't know how many of y'all actually do know me. After I lost Dylan, that's been a big distraction for me. I constantly deal with feelings of my own depression and anxiety. A lot of it for me has been turning it into trying to find my own mission and using that instead of actually ignoring it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important transition that we have to make. That's a mental transition to turn that distraction into the mission, into the focus. I think that's a huge corner that we have to turn, instead of looking at that and saying, that is the road to my faith, to look at that like you've been doing. And that's been, really impressive to me, and to say, how can I focus on that to make my faith stronger, to give my faith purpose, to give me something to look at, to work on, and to move towards. I think that's true. Caitlin Rose, what you got?
I was just going to say one of my biggest distractions probably is other people sometimes. And I think that can go a couple different ways. Like if, I was thinking about when you were talking about running the race and everything and what you're focusing on, one of the things I thought about was I don't focus on the finish line, because if I focus on the finish line, I'm not going to make it because the finish line's too far away. When I would run, I don't do that anymore, but when I used to, I would focus on something a few feet in front of me and then a few feet in front of me. And so you think about Paul, who said, imitate me as I imitate Christ Jesus.
Right.
And so I was thinking about sometimes, looking at other people, like you said last week about cloud of witnesses, focusing on the right people. But my biggest distraction is I often focus on the wrong people, and I get caught up in the wrong mission, like everybody's been saying about, bad company and different things like that. And so that's probably my biggest distraction. But I think sometimes, like you were just saying, it can also be one of my biggest strengths is when I learn to focus on the right people and they point me closer to Jesus. And I know that was kind of all over the place, but
well, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think we walk a very fine line between something being our greatest weakness or our greatest strength. You know, our greatest strength can become a weakness. And in the same way, our greatest weakness can become a strength when we figure out how to focus them in the right way. And I think a lot of times, man, that is a fine line. It is tough to try and figure out how to turn that. But, you know, if Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith, then that's going to help us out. I got Marcia Oakley over here on Facebook. Marcia says, are the Greek words still supposed to be taking up the whole screen? Just wondering. That's why I should read things before I read them out loud. And yes, I definitely forgot to stop sharing my screen a long time ago. So I appreciate the folks that got to look at Hebrews chapter 12 and the Greek letters there. My bad. At least you got something to focus on or to distract you. I don't know. Was that a strength or a weakness? I don't know. But anyway, if you want to learn how to read any of those words, feel free to get in touch with me, and I will get you in touch with Autumn or Logan, and they will help you out gladly. I am volunteering for that kind of service. So we've got these things that distract us. We recognize, I think we have to recognize that there are going to be things that are going to try and take your focus off. You know, you've seen the horses pulling carriages or you know, riding or something like that. A lot of times, you know, I know Joe talks about this sometimes with his mules, you know, when he's plowing a field, you've got to put these blinders on these animals so that they don't get distracted, so they don't look the wrong ways. And we've got to learn how to focus. That's the last question that I want us to think about tonight. What is it that helps you focus on Christ? I'm talking about specifically in your Christian walk. When we're talking about Hebrews chapter 12, we're talking about being a part of a kingdom that can't be shaken. And one of the ways to do that is to constantly look to Jesus. What are some things that you have found that help you sometimes? What are some things that you have found help you keep that focus? I'd like to hear several of them over the next couple of minutes. We'll start with Gwen and Jerry. Jerry, go ahead. Unmute your microphone. Tell us what you got.
The thing that helps me the most is surrounding myself with the kind of people that think that way. The more people that I'm around like that, the more it strengthens me.
Yep. It's amazing how we are shaped by the company that we keep, you know, and if they're always talking about sports, we're going to be talking about sports. If they're always talking about hunting, we're going to be talking about hunting. If they're always talking about politics, we're going to be thinking about politics. You know, if they're thinking about Christ, we're going to be thinking about Christ. Go ahead, Richard.
If I focus on the bigger picture, then it helps me get past the little distractions and little things that are in front of me. Focus on the big things of heaven and focus on, you know, I tell people in counseling that if, to be married 50 years, you don't have to be married for 50 years. All you have to do is be married today. All you have to do is get through today. Right. You just have to do it one day at a time. You don't have to focus on on everything that comes along in the moment. You just have to keep going and keep moving and focus on the bigger picture ahead of you.
What is the next right thing? That's exactly right. That is exactly right. No, we're not going to talk about Frozen 2. That is not my motivation for that, but I did just watch it. Jim, I see you got your hand up. Jim, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Well, in a sense, like Richard was saying, a lot of times we focus too much on the future than we do on the present. I mean, I'm not guaranteed the future. I'm not guaranteed the next 5 minutes. I'm not guaranteed the next 24 hours. I'm not guaranteed the next 10 years. But the problem is we put so much focus on the future instead of what we can do for today. And our problem is that we do so much. We want to make big plans, which is great. But the problem is those plans may not be able to be completed. Case in point, I mean, if you're on vacation, I mean, all those who did had
Lads to leaders.
taken a cruise,
Oh yeah, yeah.
they didn't flourish because they said that they weren't able to do it. So being able to look at what I can do today, I mean, what am I going to be able to do for Christ today, this time? Not in the future, because I'm not guaranteed the future. So I got to live each day as one day, just like Richard was saying. Do it a day at a time, not looking at the prolonged
Right.
thing, because we're not guaranteed.
It adds up. Yep. Logan showed from from the little book.
Uh-oh.
From the
Can y'all
person
hear
wrote
him?
it. I think it's just from the whole
They were talking
Wait,
about
what?
Frozen
What?
too.
Your internet's messing up a little bit.
Okay, am I back? Is it
Yeah,
better
you're
now?
good now.
All right. I was going to read this quote. What saves a man is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but you have to take it. And that's that progress, one step, one day at a time, I think that matters. But we have to be focused in the right area when we do that. So if we want to be part of an unshakable kingdom, first we have to lay aside the baggage that weighs us down. We have to disentangle from the sin that trips us up. We have to focus on our goal. Our goal is to be like Christ, and he is the author and the finisher of our faith. And we need to find ways to focus on that every day. In the next couple of weeks, we'll think about a couple of more ideas and options. But I really appreciate discussion tonight. I appreciate everybody that's participated on Facebook, on Boxcast as well, and hope that it has been beneficial to you. Let's finish with a prayer, and we will stick around. If you want to chat with some folks, we'll unmute microphones and just kind of fellowship a little bit before we close out the classroom tonight. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, you have been good to us. And in this particular time, when it is easy to focus on things that are not going well, I thank you for the reminder of your blessing and the reminder of your care. And I know that that care may not look the same as we are accustomed to seeing in the days and weeks to come, as we as a country and indeed as a world continue to struggle with this epidemic, with this medical crisis, with this virus. As we try to put pieces back together, we know that things are being shaken now, that economies are falling, that businesses are struggling, that jobs are being lost, that families are struggling, lives are being taken. And as all that uncertainty mounts, we know that our reality may change. We know that what has been normal for us may not be the same, but that does not diminish your care for us, because we still believe that you will never leave us nor forsake us. And as we make these adjustments, we ask that you would continue to be present, that you would continue to allow us to see your hand at work, that we could know the right choices to make, and that when we don't know, we will rely on your word and we will rely on your people to guide us. We will make wise, courageous decisions to do the next right thing. Everything that we do will come from our focus being on you. Help us to create that unshakable kingdom here and now that we are longing to be a part of in that great by and by. Help us be the kind of people that you want us to be, that city set on a hill, so that we can shine like stars in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, guys, if you want to unmute your microphone and chat a little bit, have at it. And if you got to go, you got to go. I understand that too. But certainly, I have been looking
Hey,
forward to
y'all.
seeing most of your pretty faces.
Yay, thank you, Adam, for calling me pretty. I love it.
Hey, there you go.
Hey, Weston.
I'm happy.
This is when we're supposed to bring out the kids and the pets, right? Where are the cats? Where are the dogs? Where are the children?
I'm sleeping.
Steve,
Gwen, what's up, Spider?
We should try singing a song. Tell us in the latest
where's our
song.
cat? Weston is in rare form tonight.
Baron, I was waiting for you to sit there to pop out some of that fruit that you knew.
What'd you say, Jim?
I was waiting for you to pop out some of that Greek you knew.
Go outside.
Oh, I don't know any Greek, but I don't think Adam, anti can just mean any, like it has meaning other than just the opposite.
What do you mean?
Like in the genitive, it's for.
I get that.
Like
One of your friends.
But I still think it's for as in exchange of.
Oh,
This
okay.
for that.
I could see
I
that.
mean, that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm right. My opinion is right.
Oh, I don't know any
While he
Greek.
was talking, Owen picked up the goods.
No, I don't.
Amanda, that's a pretty cat.
Last week I was stuck at work and I didn't show my pet off.
It's a big cat.
So are you not working? So Amanda, you're not at work? Nice. I'm glad.
For once.
Yeah, right? Take
We
it when
lost
you get it.
Brad. Brad must have got, in trouble with the man. He had
I
to
think
get off.
so. Well, Brad is the man. When he's at Walmart, he is the man. But still,
Oh.
I think he probably got called away to a toilet paper emergency, would be my
I
guess.
was going to say, toilet paper and paper towel.
Spilling all, man.
You got a balloon, Weston?
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. You know it.
Happy Passover. It's Passover today. It's Pascha. It's Pascha.
Weston, I'll get you a gummy for
Yeah.
for a chocolate rabbit.
Chocolate rabbit. Gwen, are you still having to go into work?
Well, a couple of days a week just to get the mail, but they've actually closed down campus. They've locked all the buildings.
Wow.
So I might go in once a week for the next few weeks.
Yeah. Autumn had to go into Heritage today, and she's going to have to go in tomorrow for a meeting or two, but kind of the same thing. Most of the time she's at home, but yeah.
I tell you what, Zoom is making a killing. I have been on
yeah.
more Zoom meetings this week.
As long as they don't get shut down. We've been
I
having
just
to worry
keep
about
waiting for some
China.
strange person to pop up.
Well, I see
Yeah.
where one of the schools canceled Zoom. They won't allow them to do
Yes.
Zoom.
And New York and New Jersey have both said that the public schools cannot use Zoom until they get their stuff worked out. I think Autumn said that Zoom, New York filed a civil suit against Zoom in court.
Yeah, I read that.
So that's some
They've
problems.
got the money now. They can fight a lawsuit.
Yeah, well, that's it. Now they can afford it. I don't know.
They'll sit there, they'll sue for ventilators.
Yeah, right. We're not going to take cash anymore. I want my settlement in masks and ventilators.
Have you seen the guy that pays his bills with strips of toilet paper and he puts them in envelopes and mails them off?
That's liquid gold, baby.
Doug, what's the city doing?
Oh, we're working. We're there. We're not coming home.
Now,
We're
they're-
distancing and Lysoling each other to death and spraying the trucks down like they're the plague themselves.
That's why your hands look like that from the sermon on Sunday.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's pretty funny. We even rented a lot down at the port where the underground crews go there to meet, and the overhead crews meet up there at the warehouse, so that we're not all congregating. I mean, it's
Really?
yeah.
Are they giving y'all masks?
No, I ordered some today. I ordered a bunch of masks last week, but when the CDC come out with the new regulations Friday, that knocked us down the list on getting those masks that we ordered. It's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. So we found some masks today from an electrical supply company that we're going to use just to give the guys some level of protection. And but it's a big mess. It's
I've got some for sale, Doug.
Do what?
500 apiece.
I can't. All right, say that one more time, Jim.
I said, I've got some for sale, 500 apiece.
Well, I'll stay with what I got then.
Well, if any of you need any skin surgeries, Leslie's doctor's office is opening back up next week.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Really?
no.
How about that?
I don't know. I got a couple spots, so that ain't good.
Opening back up next week.
Well,
Man, that seems a little crazy.
Yeah.
Call me, you know, because I'm supposed to go pretty soon, but I don't know when it is.
well, I don't.
Guess I better call tomorrow.
I could really get on a soapbox about
I
this,
don't know.
but I won't.
What good would it do, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what really bothers me has been going on is that nearly 2,000 people died yesterday, and people keep saying it's fake and it's trumped up and, you know, it's not really happening, and they're exaggerating deaths and making things up, and it just irritates me so bad.
Where's your sister?
Yeah, I'm not hearing that, thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Just
have.
saying that he gets,
Go ahead, Deirdre.
just saying that he gets irritated when people put this down as a conspiracy theory and say it's not really happening.
I am hearing that. From a few
Are ya?
people. Yeah, and it's highly disturbing. I have another contact, another friend. Of course, if you didn't see it, you know, I put the video up that I did with a friend of mine. She's a ER nurse out in Dallas. She definitely is. She knows better than that. She's a really good bringer of truth to that conversation. But then somebody else up in New York was talking about they got somebody sent them pictures of the body bags, you know, that are full, and you know, just multiple body bags, and it's not a joke. And New York City is in a state of crisis.
It's sad.
Really is.
Yes.
We got to watch
What are y'all
it.
gonna do tomorrow? What's on tap tomorrow? What are we gonna do?
About
Zoom meetings.
More Zoom meetings? Yeah.
We got to
Gary?
watch it now.
we'll be on with the teens tomorrow night, 6 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, Team Devo tomorrow, 6 p.m. What are you saying?
I say you got to watch that sanitizer again from Jack Daniels. I mean, who knows?
Don't drink the sanitizer from the distillery.
Oh, hey, we did receive 8 half-gallon jugs from Singing River Brewery right across Dr. Hicks from us today of hand sanitizer. And when you open it up and smell it, oh yeah.
Huh.
It's pretty funny. So I told the guys, please use it to rub on your hands and not drink.
Was it 80 proof?
I don't know what it was, but it smelled. It smelled.
Oh man.
Funny.
Give all of them drug screens when they come out of the truck.
I know, that's the truth. Oh boy.
See, okay, well, give me your arm. We're taking blood.
All right.
Y'all.
Well, it was good. I appreciate you guys.
Well, we're just getting, Adam,
Yeah.
just for a heads up for everybody that's on there, all the carpet in the building is laid. They should have the pews in set tomorrow. And then the women's bathroom, the toilets will be set tomorrow. So pretty much everything going towards the back when it comes to the remodeling will pretty much be done. Carpet, pews, stuff like that. That will all be finished tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's going to be awesome. And of course, you know, be real careful. The temptation to go by the building and poke your head in and stuff is a big temptation, but they are really, really trying to avoid contact with the outside world right now. So if you've got something at the building that you need, just go to see Susie at the office. But we've been getting in trouble this week for spending too much time around the workers. But when they're finished and they're emptied out, it's going to be something to see. It's going to be awesome.
And the carpet for the classrooms in the back is in. So it's just a matter of setting the time to get the carpet store to come up and lay it. So ready to go.
That'd be awesome. The whole building.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, y'all have a great night.
Y'all have a great night. We will see
We'll
you all
do it.
later. I'm kicking
See
you
y'all.
out.
Take care.